Meanwhile, back in December.
I can't get you out of my mind. It's like I feel it for the first time. Been thinking about you all night. I've been searching for this all my life.
Alright, y'all. We are here at Belle Meade to do a tour. We're going to tell you more about it after we get checked in. But the tour we're going to do is the African American enslaved people tour. Because that's what one I care about. I don't care about the white person who owned the mansion. I mean, we got enough of those tours.
You did?
I feel like, this is what I feel, since he asked why did I pick that one. There's a lot of history about African Americans around the world. But a lot of people care about their roots. And because a lot of the people who go on a lot of tours historically throughout the world, because I've been on a lot of them, are usually people who don't look like us. They don't cater to our story because we don't show up. That's why when I see tours like this about our story, I show up to let them know we are interested. Tell us more about that, please. And not just revisionist history, even though I expect it to be revisionist history. But it just is what it is at this point. But the bottom line is money speaks louder than words. Located in Nashville, Tennessee, this now 30-acre property used to be 5,400 acres. Bought in 1807 on land that once belonged to the Natchez natives and built in the 1820s by enslaved black people. This translates to me as stolen from its native people and built by force by slaves. We are now going to go on the Journey to Jubilee tour.
Alright folks, go ahead and get started. My name is Jay. I'll be in tour back today. I'm going to lead tour. The Spanish history goes to about 1807 to 1906, so roughly 99 years. We are going to discuss those who were enslaved here at Belle Meade during our slavery and what their lives were like post-emancipation and so on. Now when you hear that term plantation, what types of crops do you think this family is growing to prove most of their wealth?
Cotton.
Cotton, tobacco, corn, some of those major cash crops. That is not how this family is accruing most of their wealth. They're going to do that through buying, selling, and breeding American thoroughbred racehorses. That they are utilizing enslaved jockeys to race the horses. But to make sure that they stay within a racing weight, they may not feed them for extended periods of time, or wear them up to their necks and horse manure to make them sweat out.
This is the other tour, babe. Inside here is the other tour. This is the tour Jay wanted to go on. But I told him he black now. Yeah, with my people.
There is an account from an enslaved gentleman here in Nashville, not this farm, another farm. But he wanted to get his freedom. His master said, okay, well, if you work for me for 5 years, I'll pay you this amount of money and you can buy your freedom. And so it's 5 years, and he does it, and he pays her his freedom. And they're like, okay, you're free, but your wife's not. Well, I want my wife. Okay, well, if you work for us for another 5 years, we'll get her free. And so he works for another 5 years. All right, she's free, but your kids aren't. But we'll do you a favor. We'll only charge you $100 for each kid. I do like to stop here for just a second and kind of talk about the layout of the farm. So this, of course, is the main house. This balcony and that portico there, that is accessible from the master bedroom or this guest bedroom off the corner here. So the family and guests can sit out there and socialize. Over on this side, you see there's an inside cabin. Behind that cabin is a stone wall. Behind that stone wall would have been 16 of those enslaved cabins in a U-shaped pattern. We know that based off of ground penetrating radar we've had done on the property. We have found the foundations of those cabins and confirmed that newspaper articles. So this is an original enslaved cabin from the time period, but it's not original to this farm. This came from another plantation in East Nashville called Cleveland Hall. It was brought here in the year 2000, but it's very similar to the ones that were here on the property during the time period. This material you see here is log cabin. That's one of the most common materials you see a lot of enslaved dwellings being made out of. Another common material is wood slat boards or sawmill boards. This picture was taken of some other cabins on the property in the 1890s, so still post-emancipation, but they had not changed very much. And you can see the wood slat board construction. Still very basic, very primitive.
In 1865, 136 enslaved men, women, and children at Belle Meade Farm gained their freedom. With this freedom, they gained the right to choose where they would live and work. 72 farm workers continued under the employ of General William Giles Harding, with 4 families continuing to live on the grounds and many other commuting to work each day from various neighborhoods around Nashville. The living quarters shown in this photograph were home to both enslaved families and later freemen who continued to work on the Belle Meade farm. Many of these families occupied the structures until the mid-20th century. In the 1970s, the last remaining building was dismantled and moved to make way for new development. But you know what's weird about that?
What?
They said they can build themselves, but they also built the masses' house. So I'm pretty sure they would have been able to build themselves a better house. You know what I mean? Of course. But you know, it makes it sound like these were easier for them to build. No, because they built all this stuff.
Probably more affordable.
Yeah, it's cheaper for us to let them build one of these while they build us opulence.
Well-known abolitionist from Massachusetts. After visiting here, he would tell John Harding, if this is what slavery is like, I may have to rethink my whole thoughts on this. That's an abolitionist sentence. Why do you think he would say that? We do have to understand what could Charles Sumner be comparing it to. What has he read in newspapers? What has he read in books? We know that he visits a couple cash crop farms in Kentucky before he comes here. On the surface, it might look a little bit different. If by chance he visited a sugarcane plantation in Louisiana, that's going to look drastically different. So we have to understand what is he comparing it to. Now, I do like to ask this question for people to think about. Do you think John Harding's going to show him everything that's happening here on a day-to-day basis? Probably not. He's probably only going to show him what he wants him to see. There could be benefit to John Harding doing that. Because if Charles Sumner goes back up north and tells other very powerful, prominent abolitionist politicians it's not that bad, he's actually helping people, well, John Harding just secured his own labor force. We do get asked this question a lot. Were they good slave owners that treat your slaves good? That's a tough question because you're going to have to ask yourself, what do you feel comfortable with calling someone a good slave owner? At the bare minimum, they are owning human beings as property, forcing them to hard labor against their will without compensation. Now, we don't have documentation of violence specifically happening on the farm. Again, does not mean it didn't happen. We do know that an enslaved person from Belle Meade does get caught stealing food in downtown Nashville, and John Harding gets permission for him to be punished by 90 lashes. Doesn't happen on the farm. It happens in downtown Nashville. It still illustrates that that type of punishment is in the wheelhouse of his thinking, and that there is a decent chance it's probably happening on the farm as well.
Yeah, I know a lot of South Carolina plantations had it like that. They had workhouses away from the plantation where they would send them off for punishment. So you can still be perceived as you treat them well because they did that over there, which was more of like government-ran places.
Any last-minute questions?
So what does Jubilee mean?
So usually associated with like traditions of enslaved people that come here, this association with the Day of Freedom, or the Day of Celebration. This, of course, is the main house. This side of the house is where the family is living. They're entertaining guests. The other side of the house is where the kitchen house would have been. You had about 15 to 20 enslaved domestic staff, kitchen staff, working inside the house. There is a misconception that they had it easier, it was less of hard labor. It's not necessarily the case. It's just a different type of hard labor. This family is internationally known for entertaining guests. During the time of a yearling sale season where they're selling off one-year-old horses, they can have anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 people on this property at one time. That they're Post-emancipation doesn't really change a whole lot. In 1897, during a 6-month period that year, this family entertains 40,000 people.
Oh, wow.
That's at least 115 people a day for 6 months straight. I think it's also very important to acknowledge that 10% of the enslaved people on this farm are mulatto and mixed race. Mulatto and mixed race children don't just fall out of the sky. I'll let you draw your own conclusions on that. I can assure you it's not consensual. Sexual violence is very common within that institution of slavery and most common with enslaved domestic staff and kitchen staff.
It's a beautiful thing. There we go, a little bit more.
Okay. So this is the.
It's a little holiday bonus. It's called Soiree. It's a sparkling Grenache rosé. I practice all night. So
Cheers. I know, I'm like.
Yeah.
Swirl it. Y'all, that was good. I'm gonna go online and order some of the red muscadine.
You know I'm a part of the girls, right?
You're not getting one.
I'm a part of the girls.
No, you want it, Brad. You're not part of the girls.
Everything
And
they
then
do
you
a part
over
of.
here trying to get an apron. I'm all sick of him.
Look. Not tonight, honey. I like this one. Why you all up in my grill?
Y'all, this is some good stuff.
I want bread delivered to the man cave and the wine, okay?
So what did you think about this tour, babe?
Well, what I learned, how the world was operating, like people thought it was a privilege to be a slave. Like
No, people didn't think it was a privilege to be a slave.
no,
People thought it was a privilege to have slaves. Is that what you meant?
No, because he was saying that how slaves would think.
I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, how slaves would think, like, how would I survive out of here? Like, how would I survive in Virginia when I move over?
Like, for instance, what he was saying, the tour guide was like, when slavery was abolished, there were a lot of people who chose to remain on the plantation.
Yes.
And
because they felt like hopeless, like they're not going to make it out there.
Yeah, so they chose to continue working for the family because it felt like a better and safer option to stick with the devil you know. But it reminds me of Harriet Tubman, who says she freed hundreds of slaves, but she could have freed hundreds more if they only knew they were slaves. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Not all slaves wanted to be freed.
Yes.
So that's the main thing. If you did not know you was a slave, and if you felt like Massa provides us a great life, why leave this?
Yep.
And it just reminds you. I mean, I really felt like our tour guide did a great job. I felt like it was going to be revisionist history, but I felt like he did a great job trying to present balance.
Yes.
And context.
And to think about it, like, hypothetically thinking.
Like some of us, like a lot of people always say, well, if I was a slave, I would have did this, I would have did that. You a lie.
No.
Because a lot of you are still slaves today, and you're not doing anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
You have jobs that you hate, but you don't want to leave because
you're not getting paid what you're supposed to be getting paid for.
Yeah, but you're comfortable with what you know. So you stay there and you put up with it, and you complain under your breath. So, yeah, I felt like this was a really good tour.
Yes.
And I'm happy to have supported it with my money. Because let me tell you, the other part is this. You can come here.
Our money.
You can come here and you can tour the grounds without paying the tour with the tour guide. You know what I'm saying? Like you can come and park.
Like Wynwood Wall and stuff.
Yeah, you can come and park and you can walk around
you could just go.
the outside.
But you're not going to really know.
So my thing is, you can tour the outside. You can't go inside the mansion, but you can tour the outside. You can see the slave cabins, and you can read the literature around the place, and you don't have to pay for that. That's free 99. But like I said, I believe in supporting with commerce the things that I believe in, and I feel like if you support with commerce these sort of tours, they will provide more of these tours, and they will do more of the research for these tours, because the African American Black experience in this country has been neglected. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go, and I want to look through this stuff again because I didn't have time to necessarily read everything. So I want to go through and read some of the stuff that I didn't get to read.
Okay.
So now let me point something out real quick right here. Let me point something out. You see right here, they said they constructed the mansion and they purchased 43 bottles of wine and 32 empty bottles. That's not a lot. So what that tells me right there with business, sometimes start with what you have and let it build from there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
32 empty bottles to further produce something with and sell. I love that. I love that. Oh, this was the guy he was showing. He's black, guys.
Oh,
He
he's
was the grandson of one of the former slaves. So he was born here a slave in 1861. He was born here a slave in 1861. But of course, freedom came a few years after he was born. But he remained here on the property as the hired help. So due to lack of records kept by slave owners, it is often difficult to piece together the full story of the daily lives and experience of enslaved individuals. In particular, and particularly disheartening in the lack of information about the burial practices and locations of the people who were held in slavery at this estate. Typically, funerals for enslaved people took place at night, and we assume this was true at Belle Meade as well. Evening and nighttime hours were often the only time of the day when many enslaved people were not required to be about their forced work. Likewise, holding funerals at night allowed other members of the enslaved communities from nearby plantations to attend the services. In other areas, slave funerals were one aspect of the enslaved culture that was untouched by white men. Their customs or their religious traditions. For example, there are accounts of white seashells and pebbles being used to decorate burial places in some parts of the South. These items are indicative of the watery underworld that features in the religious customs of some Central African tribes. Additionally, some historians note that Central Africa, the color white, not black, is associated with death. The precise location of the graves of those enslaved at Belle Meade remains a mystery, as death and burial records of the enslaved workers no longer exist, if they ever did. Archaeological evidence and oral history records indicated a burial site on the land that now included in the outskirts of the Percy Warner Park. Additional records suggest a burial site under what is now the Belle Meade Highlands neighborhood. Following emancipation, several formerly enslaved men and women, such as Susanna Carter and her family, were buried at Mount Ararat Cemetery, the first African-American cemetery in Nashville.
This is the front of the house, front entrance.
So this is where John Harding started. He started here, and I want to say started from the bottom, now he here, but it's not admirable because he did it with free labor. Free labor. Like, come on. You know? So they say, well, he lived in a house that was very humble beginnings. But so what? When you steal a workforce and make them do your bidding, who wouldn't be able to start from one place and elevate their position very quickly?
Ooh.
I know. This is actually pretty warm here.
This is the downstairs. Oh no, they got it upstairs.
Because I want to. Oh, you don't like that deep. They have bombs and shit.
I can't get you out of my mind. It's like I feel it for the first time. Been thinking about you all night. I've been searching for this all my life. Because